All right, so today I'm going to talk about the i3 8100. So the entire purpose of me using the CPU was, well, I guess there's kind of two reasons. One, I just happen to have one on hand, and two, I'm looking to see what the cheapest CPU I can actually use for gaming, budget gaming system that can capable of running Windows 11. Now, I think the i3 8100 is probably like the weakest you can, the weakest and the cheapest, possibly the cheapest, or probably tied for the cheapest that you can go and still run Windows 11. I see them as low as $15, but when you start looking at the motherboard and other peripherals to go into it, the build can start to add up pretty quick. And I think it's probably similar to close range of what you would do if you would go with a Ryzen. So well, I did use this successfully, well, at least the whole idea was to see if I could play esports. I was like, as long as it plays esports and with low settings, without stuttering and bouncing around all over the place, then that's fine. That's what I'll go for. And I think it was a success. Now, a success. The first time I used the CPU setup, I used it with a RX 580, and even with the graphics being as low as they can go, it was a stutter fest, and I could not get the game to run Black Myth Wukong. But here, I was able to run Black Myth Wukong even on medium settings for a while. The only time I ran into issues on medium settings with this setup the way it was is when I transitioned from a boss. Now, there's no loading screen when a boss fight initiates, but there's definitely something that happens. There is some definitely transition going on in the game, because I've had a couple of times where I was testing stuff out, and if the graphics or if it couldn't keep up, it would lag out during the transition between the boss fight starting or just running around the area. So I went back and I retooled again, and I went ahead and dropped everything down to low, and I played around, just kind of clearing the trash mobs, and then went back to the boss, and no issues. And I try to make sure I do things where I'm in combat or in crowds, so we can get a real test of what's going on here. Because I know one thing that bothers me is the people testing frame rates on a graphics card or whatnot, and they're just either no benchmark, in-game benchmark, or they're just walking down the lane. I mean, a lot of GPUs, CPUs can, just walk through an area and not lag out, but start to drop frames and have issues as soon as you go into combat. So yeah, so that was the goal, was just to see if I could play and not have that issue. So Fortnite was the priority, and Fortnite is specifically being because Fortnite is very CPU heavy, CPU dependent. Initially, when I had my daughter a Roblox rig with this setup using a 580, it stuttered. It was kind of playable. Fortnite was kind of playable. Like, she won a match while using that computer, but it did stutter. So I was trying to see if the 3050, I could run the 3050 without the stutter. Like, I know I could go with the 980, and the 980 would be actually more powerful, but I figured, the 3050 is something I don't need to worried about keeping in my stash. I'm looking to get rid of, so I put it in this setup, and it played Fortnite just fine. It even played at a little higher graphical settings, like it would run on DX12, but I went ahead and put everything in performance mode just to make everything as optimized as it could possibly get. And the only thing that was an issue was leaving FPS unlimited, because the FPS was fine. Like, it was trying to climb over 100, and that was what it would cause the stuttering. So once I locked FPS at 60 on performance mode, even though the CPU usage did spike out every once in a while, it didn't cause any stuttering. I think the average, just from memory here, is the CPU usage was around like 80%, like on the higher sides. And so again, like, I played quite a bit of Fortnite, and I'm not that good at it, so not complete matches or whatnot, but I jumped around in there, made sure I get a couple of kills to get in some combat scenarios, and no stuttering outside the initial bus drop. With Fortnite passing the test that I could officially call this, worthy of esports at the very least. So I guess the next, I don't know if it's considered an esport title yet, but I would imagine it will be. Marvel Rivals is very popular right now. I think it's one of the most played games out right now. So that was my next test, was to see if it could run Marvel Rivals. I was like, well, let's see if it plays one of the most popular games that are currently out. Again, we dropped it at low, keep the FPS at 60, and just let the game run. And multiple matches, I think there was 3 or 4 matches we played, and never an issue with lag or stuttering. Right. So I guess at the end to say, I wouldn't recommend it. I guess I wouldn't recommend you to go out of your way for this. I mean, again, this is the whole idea for this build was to be a budget gamer that is capable of running Windows 11. And unfortunately, the combos that you can get that are cheaper than this, that are way more powerful than this, they stop at Windows 10, right? So like the 4790K is still a viable build, although I can leave a link to that build. I wouldn't recommend that because of cost. But there are plenty of CPUs out there, CPU GPU combos that are great for budget that just don't run Windows 11. I'm gonna say that this was a pass. I'm gonna give this a pass. I'm like, yeah, you can do this, but this is not something I would recommend you do. I guess if you have the parts laying around, or if you get like a crazy good deal on it, then go for it. But I wouldn't pay what I paid initially to get this again. The next test I'm gonna do is for a Windows 11 budget build is the Ryzen 5 2600. I'm gonna do that next, and potentially later on down the line, maybe do an i5 8400. Because I think the i5 8400 was actually the minimum requirements for Black Myth Wukong. So I would imagine that if the company's saying, hey, this is our minimum, and I was able to play Wukong on the 8100 from i3, the 8400 should perform a lot better. And I believe I saw the 8400 in a price range just not crazy. Yep. So again, I guess I wouldn't recommend you going out of your way to grab an i3 8100, but the i3 8100 is the very first benchmark I did for this channel. I believe it was. If it wasn't the very first video, then it was one of the first 3 for sure. And I know that still gets some views, so I figured there was some interest there, and I would try it again because I had the parts on hand. So there's that. And again, you should see cards popping up, and I guess you can go in the description if you want to see the videos in length. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and peace.